What I wanted to do this morning was not so much talk about startup loans, we'll come on to that for the moment, but why it was my objective coming back to government last October that startup loans are so important. David Cameron asked me to do a report on startups and of small business, which was published 2 months ago. It's the first report since 1971, the Bolton report. And nobody had a copy of the Bolton report, so I went ahead doing what I was doing. Towards the end, an official told me that they had a copy for sale on Amazon, if you please. There wasn't one in the whole of the Cabinet Office, but there was in Amazon. And I bought it. And I could not believe what I actually read. Now, 1971, I'd already sold out my first company. I was on to a second one. It was at a time before the property crash of 73. The world was going well. And I read this report by Bolton, and he says clearly small firms are on the way out. The future is large companies, they're more efficient. The future, they can spend more on research and development. It's probably worthwhile, his actual words, that the Department of Industry should set up a small firms department. And there were only 800,000 firms in the country, small firms, and they were declining. Well, by 90, what he completely omitted to mention, that income tax was 83 and 98%. Over £20,000 a year, the rate was 83%. And if you had any interest or any dividend, you paid 15% on top, so it went up to 98. In fact, one year it was 103%, which I thought was really entrepreneurial and really helped you. Anyway, in 1979, we started with the first of the small firms programs. That was part of my first job. And during the 80s, we built up the number of small firms to 2 million. In the 90s, it continued to grow. By 95, the figure had gone up now to 2.75 million. And then along came the internet, which gave an enormous boost to the ability to start up a new business. Of course, it took time for the internet to really get going. But today, there are 4.5 million firms in this country. In case anybody thinks this is good, I remind everybody that an official figure for the business department says that although we're seen to be the most entrepreneurial nation in Europe, fact is, if we were as entrepreneurial as the United States of America, we would have 900,000 more firms in this country. The number would go up from 4.5 million to 5.4 million. There would be no structural unemployment. We'd have a chancellor who occasionally smiled, and the whole thing would look entirely different. And I believe we really can get from here to there, because the story of the last 30 and 35 years is part of the changing pattern of business. Let me go back with one other figure. I started work in 1948, just after the Olympics. First time in London. I was 16, I left school, became an article clerk to a lawyer. You will not believe it, but age 17, I'd go to work wearing a bowler hat with a stiff white collar and going into a railway carriage full of other people with bowler hats and stiff white collars. It was a very different world. But it was a world of a 50-week year. It was a world of a 48-hour week. And it was a world of 16 to 67. Retiring age was 67. You started work at 16. If you multiply those hours up, it's over double the number of average hours worked in today's world. So in one working lifetime, if you describe it as that, in one working lifetime, we have halved the number of hours. Secondly, that the majority, vast majority, nearly 90% of jobs in the last 3 years have been part-time. And we are moving into the future, into a part-time world in which the number of people working in large firms is going to continue to go down and down, and the number of people starting up, working for themselves, working with different rent is going to go up. And so if we're to prepare ourselves for the employment of the future, I mean, when I started, it was completely traditional. You got your first job, and the odds were you'd retire on that first job, and you'd carry on all the way through. In those days, firms would pride themselves on doing absolutely everything. So they had long vertical structures. Well, that all disappeared over the last 20 or 30 years, and there are enormous opportunities now for people to work for themselves, to work in a variety of different areas, to work, if necessary, from home, though in the age, in the endeavour of keeping the marriage statistics up, I suggest you don't always work at home, but that's another matter. But there are ways in which you can now have opportunities to create a good life for yourself and a much more interesting. In fact, I tell everybody, the last time I worked was the end of March '61, when I left my then employer and started up for myself, because there is an excitement and interest in working for yourself that I never found working for anybody else. I won't say that about David Cameron. I'm still working for myself. Okay. Right. So we have got to encourage startups. We've got to encourage people to work for themselves. What startup loans do, and incidentally, I should say, from the time I left government, which was in '89, for most of those years, I was involved with the Prince's Trust. And the Prince's Trust, I was responsible for their startup program. There were no new ideas in this world. I just stole the startup program that the Prince's Trust does. Now, the Prince's Trust works on purpose in the more difficult, more disadvantaged quintile. People who've left prison, drug rehab, care, indifferent education. And they start up businesses with the aid of a mentor, and their success ratio is exactly the same, roughly, as the national average. And in fact, because it's the power of the mentor to help you to get going, help you with the business plan that really, really works. And this program, which we're just starting now, really starts in the beginning of September, is the first government program ever to help people to start up new businesses that is not confined to the unemployed. It's for everybody. And whether you're a college graduate, whether you're working at FE, whether you've never worked, it applies to all of you. All you have to have is the idea and the drive and the imagination to go and do it for yourself. So we're going to hear in a moment, I hope, from two ambassadors who will answer questions and tell of how they've started, because all our ambassadors have done the same thing, started to work for themselves, so they can speak from experience. What the startup loans will do, it will give you an average amount of £2,500. It doesn't, and it gives you something infinitely more valuable than the amount of the loan. And that is a mentor to help you sit down and work out a business plan, to help to shape the business plan, and then to guide you when you appear before a panel, and then to be available to you for end of a telephone, Skype, whatever, as you start going and as you start to build up your own endeavor. And it can reach all over the place. I took a taxi in the West End not long ago. We got stuck in a traffic jam. By the time we came out, I'd signed up his son to come in the startup program, because he told me he had a 19-year-old son who was at home, had this idea he wanted to do a mobile valeting car service. And of course, here is the real opportunity for somebody who will sit down with you and help you work. So at the moment, I'm looking for two things. I'm looking very much for mentors, for people of experience who are quite willing to do it. I've done it quite a few times now, been a mentor. It's very rewarding. And of course, I'm looking for people at the moment under 25 who can come and start wishing and have the guts to want to start working for themselves. And it's a great time to start. I must tell you, I've started businesses at the bottom of the market, and I've started businesses at the top of the market. let me put it to you another way. I will never, ever start a business at the top of the market again, because there's only one way that the market goes. This is as good a time as any. In fact, in my view, it's the best time in my working life to start up a new business. The world will get better. It always does. There's enormous opportunities to really do it, and you do not today need much money to start a business. There are incubator units now coming up all around the country. Regis has given us 20 million pounds, mustn't exaggerate, 20 million pounds worth of accommodation for people taking start-up loans around the country. You'll find other commercial organizations are coming behind this program to really help you get going. So if young people really want to start working for themselves, now is the time, and now is the real opportunity. I don't know if you want to take questions, and we can shape it more, because I hate speaking, and I'd much rather answer a question.
Okay. Lorna, we have got some microphones, so we'll help out with this. Okay, does anybody have any questions? We have one here. And if you can give us your name and...
Sure.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Unzube Podike. I started and run a business focused on corporate advisory and fundraising. My question is regarding the loans you referred to that are focused on under 25s. And just before I let you answer that question, a recent statistic, just to give some context, that I came across is that most businesses that are started up are by individuals within the median age of 37. So there are more people that are older that set up businesses. I know the social network and most of Silicon Valley would sort of skew numbers to the other side when you're looking at the younger technology entrepreneurs. But I was more curious to know what type of businesses you're more keen to focus on, and why the age restriction at 25? Thank you.
Well, can I say I agree with you. I was 29 when I started my first business, and frankly, the older you are and the more experience you have, the more likely you are to be successful. But we have 1 million people under the age of 25 today not in employment and not doing anything. And there is no worse way to start off someone's life than by not having anything to do by the time you finish education. So that is today's priority. Now, you know, the Prince Charles, who really the Prince's Trust was the genesis of a lot of this, runs a charity called Prime, which is directed to the over 50s to help them to work for themselves. And they have the highest success rate of all, because you've got then experience and you've often got a certain amount of money. So yes, I would like to extend it to everybody. But the beginning section is going to be for those between 18, which is the legal age, and 25. I should say I met in number 10 a 16-year-old who already has made a great deal of money writing apps. And he has to trade through his mother because he can't run a bank account, which, yeah, she is. I think she's slightly worried, but that's another matter. Good. Sorry.
Yeah, Stuart Shuttle, Small Business Advisor. Lord Young, I've spoken with you at other events, and just very quickly, the problem is you're older people, the over 50s. Now, we're saying here to all the young people that they're going to need to start business. We have plenty of older, mature people that want to get back into the business world that can help and bring in through all the grants that are available for young people. But you need to do something, and the government Premier's office needs to get that message across in a strong way.
Well, first of all, I agree with you. I'm being a bit too agreeable today, but we've got to do things in order. Now, I happen to believe that for the over 50s, the loan isn't important. What is important is the mentor, is the advice, because many people in that age group have accumulated enough or have got redundancy or have got other things. But it's the advice that's the key. But you know, if you're going to change the world, you've got to change it step by step.
Can I take issue with that? The issue that I would have is that it's a situation whereby we've got a demographic age group as well. So that experience that these people have needed incentive because they've got other commitments and they have families, children, which the younger people don't have. And again, which is the chicken and the egg.
But look, you're looking at the whole world. You have to start. Chairman Mao said the Long March started with the first step. This is the first step, you know.
There is actually a question that's come in via Twitter, but is Dan Martin actually here? Dan, can you stand up? He's not here. But he sent in a question via Twitter, if I can, let's be all technology about it all. Do you know when the Startup Loans Company will officially launch and when it may actually be handing out money and mentorships?
Yes, in September. At the moment, we're still going through the process of appointing providers. But in September, it's starting work. The first loans will be made in September. And I think we'll be gearing up then. The ambassadors will be reaching out. We're looking at more support we can get from the private sector. But this is not a temporary program. We've set up the Startup Loans Company. James Khan is the chairman. We've got a very good board outside government. We've got enough money from government to really launch this program. And this is not going to be a program at the whim of ministers. This is going to be something which is going to carry on from now onwards. And when it's had 25 years experience, I promise to review it and come back and see if we need to change it.
One of the things I did want to actually mention, and I will come to you guys for questions in just a second, is that when Lord Young and I first met, we were talking about this project. What I wanted to let everybody know today, and this is more a call to action to other industry bodies across the country, but the MAA, the marketing agencies itself, is again stepping up to offer support for the Startup Loans Initiative, and there'll be at least 20, if perhaps we need more, creative directors, planning directors and MDs of the best of British marketing agencies who will join the call to action to offer mentorship. So we're putting that up, and so through the filming and through all the twitching we can do today, all you other trade bodies out there in the country, let's get behind this initiative. Questions? I will do it later.
My name's Abdul, and I'm the founder of a company called RateThatCurry.com. We actually campaigned for the startup loans with Virgin Media pioneer Zoe, and I were actually the initial campaigners for the loan. So it's excellent that the government is actually implementing it. But I suppose my question is, because again, I'm also over 25, I'm 26 now. I do want to see, and I do ask that the government support us a little bit more, because it seems that, yes, those young bodies are important, but so are we. And I would love to have Lord Young as my mentor, so if that's possible, please.
Well, I just want to say two things. One, I keep on hearing about Virgin campaigning for this. The only thing was, nobody said a word to me, nobody wrote to me, nobody asked anybody I know. So it was a very secret campaign for it, but I actually came back to government last October with one idea, was to get the loans off. For mentors, it's very rewarding. In fact, I did a mentoring session about a week ago by Skype, and which makes it very easy to actually contact people. And somewhat to my slight surprise, because I know Skype works very well when you know who you're talking to, it actually worked with somebody I hadn't met before. Could I just say there are three types of mentors? There's one is the mentor for the long run, somebody you can ring up occasionally, that can, when you have a problem, you speak to once or twice a month. It's very important. This is the person that helped you shape the business plan at the beginning and you need them. Secondly, there's the mentor to enthuse you. The people who've started up and made a success that can bring the spark to the individual to go and do it for themselves. Because all people have to realize is get the self-confidence, really just the self-confidence that they can go and do it. Because once you get set on that path, first of all, you find, yes, there are problems, yes, there are difficulties, but by golly, you feel good when it starts to really work and you're getting your business going. And the third type of mentor is the one, part of the reason we're here today, which I would like to see develop, because occasionally people need a bit of specialist advice. Just something they only come across very rarely, would like to know. Could be marketing, could be quality, could be a whole host of different things. And I hope that we can begin to put together a bank of specialist mentors who are available at the end of a phone to somebody for half an hour, whatever it is, that I think will make a big difference. Yeah.
Can I just add to that? Is it possible to get your Skype over, please?
Okay, calm down at the front
look,
here.
I am commercial, so we're going to have a little auction.
Any other questions?
Hi, I'm Charlotte from an organisation called Girls Aglow. And my question is, I know this is like loans for businesses, but does it apply to organisations with a more charitable aspect? So what we're actually designed to do is to be a support network for young girls aged 13 to 19, where we go into schools and sort of give mentoring sessions, as well as hopefully later on in the year actually running a 6-month course for ourselves. So although there are aspects of it that we hope will generate an income, it's actually more of a charity as opposed to a business.
Yeah, well, social entrepreneurship is something which is going to grow more and more and more. And there are many people now starting businesses which are clearly not for profit. I mean, they live out of the businesses from that point of view. Now, in your instance, no, it's outside the parameters of this thing. But I don't believe in principle there's anything to stop you, if this is what you want to do, is to look at young women and help them into business and then become an agent for us to grant the loan. That should be perfectly possible. It's something I'd encourage, because the more people work for themselves, the better off they'll be.
We have a question over here.
Hi, I'm Lauren and I'm from a company called Momentous Me. I was just wondering about the application process, so whether you've refined it yet or not, because some of the applications for the things for people under 25 are quite difficult and they tend to focus on a certain sector. So we work in technology and it often rules us out if they're focused too much on somewhere else. So I was wondering how difficult the application process will be and what sort of route it will take, whether it will be business plan or what direction it will go.
Yeah, well, there will not be one process because it's up to the providers. What we're doing is we're commissioning a number of providers around the country who are able to provide a mentor to the person and to approve the business plan. These are not necessarily high-tech businesses. In fact, the vast majority will be no-tech business. You can't start a high-tech business on a small amount of money. It's something, it's one of the great mistakes. I used to chair UCL and I was on the enterprise board for years, and I only realized afterwards that the whole time we looked at research and high-tech startups. The fact is, I believe every university undergraduate in the country, every single one, should do during the course of their 3-year degree a 6-week course on starting up your own business, because nobody knows who is going to start a business. It could be archaeology, it could be languages, it could be anything. And that's something which I hope over the next few months and years we will see begin to come in to the whole of the education system. Actually, I'll go one stage further. I think children going to primary schools should realize that life has the opportunity of having a job or working for yourself. And, you know, I often ask, and I've been asking this, I was making the same speech 30 years ago. I was doing an awful lot today I was doing 30 years ago, I'm afraid. But why is it that children go into primary school knowing they can take on the whole world, and 40% leave 11 years later knowing they're failures? Because that, unfortunately, is what the educational system still is doing for young people. And we've got to look and make people realize that being academically bright is only one part of life. In fact, there's a lot more to life. I knew from the Manpower Service Commission days, 3 out of 4 young people are not naturally academic. Unfortunately, most politicians, most senior all senior civil servants come out of the academic stream and they cast the system in their mould. But I think 3 out of 4 people think differently.
Just going to take a couple more questions, and then I'll invite James and Zoe to join us. A couple more questions.
Hi, my name's Christine and I own a label called Chris G. And one of the difficulties that I found was that I'm over the age of 25 and I'm in full-time employment. It's not necessarily that I need people that I know in the similar situation don't need financial support. It's just that it's difficult to access resources because of the criteria that they come in. So we're technically seen as you don't actually necessarily need support. However, there's not an organised, or apart from coming across StartUp Britain and Workspace and other stuff on Twitter, it's been very difficult for me to find like a hub where there's support for people that are in full-time employment. As you mentioned, that people work part-time and then want to go into self-employment, but there's no one that actually can explain like how you go about telling your employers you want to go part-time without it being seen as you're not taking your current role seriously, but you kind of want to do both at the same time?
Yeah, well, I started by doing both at the same time. I mean, I had a day job, and I worked the evening. When that got up enough, I gave up the day job. I didn't dare tell my employer for a long time afterwards, but that's how many people actually start. I agree. At the moment, you are, forgive me for describing it this way, a gap in the market. I mean, there is, but I think we should talk to StartUp Britain and see.
Well, I was just going to say, if you don't mind me just suggesting a couple of things. When you say a label, does that mean a fashion label?
Yeah, a jewellery label.
Okay, so there's a great group called Fashion Angel, which is like an accelerator for fashion businesses. And a terrible plug on my side, but there's a great book by somebody I know called Working 5 to 9, How to Start a Business in Your Spare Time. So I wrote that book.
Written by
all for
Miss
people.
Jones.
Yeah, exactly. But no, on a serious point, that book was written for all the people who we saw who were in a full-time day job and looking to move into self-employment. And it does go through how you have the conversation with your employer. All right.
Thanks.
One more question. Go to the gentleman at the back. Thank you, Lorna.
Hi, my name is Dean. I'm coming back to a familiar theme, this gap between the 25 and the 50s. Really an open question in terms of do a mentoring program that would address that area is kind of where I perceive a need or where I could use a need, because I fit in the middle of that gap and I'm not necessarily a subject matter expert in all the areas that I'd like, need some guidance in that. I think Lord Young said that it will be addressed in time, but do we know of anything at the moment, or are there firm plans to address that space for mentorship in that gap?
Not at the moment, because we have not a problem, but we have to first get sufficient mentors for the under 25s. Then I personally would like to see that we could move on to the over 50s. And then eventually we'll have to look at the whole market. But, just to be completely original, Rome wasn't built in a day.
Absolutely.
And it takes time.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand the need to address the needs of the over 50s.
But if you're patient, you'll soon be over 50, and by then it will be okay.
I'm actually not that far off. But a suggestion, could the over 50s not be used to address that gap? But just a thought.
And again, just a real quick thing, there's a website called mentorsme.org or .co.uk, which is a mentoring website provided by the Department for Business.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much indeed, Lord Young. Thank you for joining us.